Hello, welcome back. We're on day 66 of bread, Bible reading every day, adjust direction. Yesterday we started in Joshua. We read chapters 1 through 4. And Joshua is now leading the children and preparing them and leading the children over into the promised land. We're going to continue in chapter 5 today. There's going to be, I'm just going to tell you that I have to have my Kleenex ready for this next chapter because there's, the part in there where the Lord is revealing himself to Joshua and to those around him. It's just a part that I love so very much. So have your pencils and your papers, your highlighters and markers. Just be ready and just let God speak to you and just bless you and just feel the presence of the Lord. Feel his presence as you read along with me, because this is the only time that you get to sit and have the author with you wherever you go when you read the Bible. So just take that opportunity and let yourself be blessed. Let yourself just absorb this and just feel it and what God is going to do here. Chapter 5. When all the Amorite kings west of the Jordan and all the Canaanite kings who lived along the Mediterranean coast heard how the Lord had dried up the Jordan River so the people of Israel could cross, they lost heart and were paralyzed with fear because of them. At that time, the Lord told Joshua, "Make flint knives and circumcise the second generation of Israelites." So Joshua made flint knives and circumcised the entire male population of Israel at Gibeath Haraloth. Joshua had to circumcise them because all the men who were old enough to fight in battle when they left Egypt had died in the wilderness. Those who left Egypt had all been circumcised, but none of those born after the Exodus during the years in the wilderness had been circumcised. The Israelites had traveled in the wilderness for 40 years until all the men who were old enough to fight in the battle when they left Egypt had died, for they had disobeyed the Lord, and the Lord vowed he would not let them enter the land he had sworn to give us, a land flowing with milk and honey. So Joshua circumcised their sons, those who had grown up to take their father's places, for they had not been circumcised on the way to the promised land. After all the males had been circumcised, they rested in the camp until they were healed. Then the Lord said to Joshua, "Today I have rolled away the shame of your slavery in Egypt." I love that so much. Today I have rolled away the shame of your slavery in Egypt. So that place has been called Gilgal to this day. While the Israelites were camped at Gilgal on the plains of Jericho, they celebrated Passover on the evening of the 14th day of the first month. The very next day they began to eat unleavened bread and roasted grain harvested from the land. No manna appeared on the day they first ate from the crops of the land, and it was never seen again. So from that time on, the Israelites ate from the crops of Canaan. When Joshua was near the town of Jericho, he looked up and saw a man standing in front of him with the sword in hand. Joshua went up to him and demanded, "Are you friend or foe?" "Neither one," he replied. And what did he say? I am the commander of the Lord's army." Who is the commander of the Lord's army? Who is the commander? It's Jesus himself. Jesus appears to Joshua. At this, Joshua fell with his face to the ground in reverence. "I am at your command." Joshua said, "What do you want your servant to do?" The commander of the Lord's army replied, "Take off your sandals, for the place where you are standing is holy." And Joshua did as he was told. I don't know about you, but I even want to take off my shoes right now, because I know that when I read this word, I'm in the presence of the Lord. Understand that holy reverence when you're in the presence of the Lord. It's one of my favorite parts of the Bible. Right there in Joshua 5:13 through 15. Chapter 6. Now the gates of Jericho. And Jesus appearing before him. Don't you know that solidified the faith that he had and the confidence that was built in him, knowing that he was chosen, the leader. And now the Lord himself has appeared before him in the flesh. The Lord appeared before him in the flesh. He didn't even know it. Are you friend or foe? He's demanding, are you friend or foe? Because he's showing his command. Neither. I am the commander of the Lord's army. Gets me every time, and it always will, and I'm thankful for that. Now the gates of Jericho were tightly shut because the people were afraid of the Israelites. No one was allowed to go out or in, but the Lord said to Joshua, I have given you Jericho, its king and all its strong warriors. You and your fighting men should march around the town once a day for 6 days. 7 priests will walk ahead of the ark, each carrying a ram's horn. On the 7th day, you are to march around the town 7 times, with the priest blowing the horns. When you hear the priest give one long blast on the ram's horns, have all the people shout as loud as they can. Then the walls of the town will collapse, and the people can charge straight into the town. Now, if you grew up in church, and you're like me, then you all know that little song, that little ditty. Joshua fought the battle of Jericho, Jericho, Jericho. Joshua fought the battle of Jericho, and the walls came tumbling down. So that was a fun song singing in children's church and all of that. But those songs are important because they help us to remember. And here I am, 60 years old, and I remember that song. I don't remember the next part of it, but I remember that song, and I remember the story. And I remember when we think about them marching around the town 7 times is what we get in our head. But no, for 6 days, they marched around it once. And on the 7th day, they marched around it 7 times. So Joshua called together the priests and said, take up the ark of the Lord's covenant and assign 7 priests to walk in front of it, each carrying a ram's horn. See, 7 is what we say is God's perfect number. On the 7th day, they would march around it 7 times. There's 7 priests, the horns blowing. Each carrying a ram's horn. Then he gave orders to the people, march around the town, and the armed men will lead the way in front of the ark of the Lord. After Joshua spoke to the people, the 7 priests with the ram's horn started marching in the presence of the Lord. Blowing the horns as they marched, and the ark of the Lord's covenant followed behind them. Some of the armed men marched in front of the priests with the horns, and some behind the ark, with the priests continually blowing the horns. Do not shout, do not even talk, Joshua commanded. Not a single word from any of you until I tell you to shout. Now, the people have to be seeing this happening that are living in the town, in the walls. They have to be seeing something that's happening. Remember, they're already fearful. So they have to be wondering, what is going to happen here? What are they doing? They're not looking at them and snubbing their nose at them because they're already fearful. They're already fearful of what's going to happen here. So the ark of the Lord was carried around the town once that day, and then everyone returned to spend the night in the camp. And imagine that, and they marched silently. Joshua got up early the next morning, and the priests again carried the ark of the Lord. The 7 priests with the ram's horn marched in front of the ark of the Lord, blowing their horns. Again, the armed men marched both in front of the priests with the horns and behind the ark of the Lord. All this time, the priests were blowing their horns. On the 2nd day, they again marched around the town once and returned to the camp. They followed this pattern for 6 days. On the 7th day, the Israelites got up at dawn and marched around the town as they had done before. But this time, they went around the town 7 times. The 7th time around, as the priests sounded the long blast on their horns, Joshua commanded the people, shout, for the Lord has given you the town. That is a proclamation. That is a declaration. When there's a declaration, it is something that is happening. He is declaring, shout, for the Lord has given you the town. Jericho and everything in it must be completely destroyed as an offering to the Lord. Only Rahab the prostitute and the others in her house will be spared, for she protected our spies. Do not take any of the things set apart for destruction, or you yourselves will be completely destroyed, and you will bring trouble on the camp of Israel.
Everything made from silver, gold, bronze, or iron is sacred to the Lord and must be brought into his treasury. When the people heard the sound of the ram's horns, they shouted as loud as they could. Suddenly, the walls of Jericho collapsed. Imagine, just at the reverberations that were going on, the sound from the ram's horns every single day. And those ram's horns were probably, without anybody knowing it, but the Lord, and this is my own observation, probably were weakening those walls every day as they marched around, constantly blowing those horns every single day, marching around once, and 7 horns blowing continually. And for 6 days that happened. And then on the 7th day, they're doing it again, this time 7 times. And on that last time, blowing those horns loudly, and then Joshua says, shout. And then they were to shout as loud as they could. And imagine, those walls just came tumbling down. They just collapsed before them. And they were able to rush in, to just crawl over that rubble, climb over that and go in and just take the town. Suddenly, the walls of Jericho collapsed and the Israelites charged straight into the town and captured it. They completely destroyed everything in it with their swords, men and women, young and old, cattle, sheep, goats, and donkeys. Meanwhile, there we are again. Joshua said to the 2 spies, keep your promise. Go to the prostitute's house and bring her out along with her family. The men who had been spies went in and brought out Rahab, her father, mother, brothers, and all relatives who were with her. They moved her whole family to a safe place near the camp of Israel. Then the Israelites burned down. And I'm going to add something really quickly here, okay? Keep Rahab in mind, because her story is one of great redemption and beauty. Such beauty. When if you know the story, then you know why. But just wait. Because who would have thought from that, a prostitute, what Rahab would become? I'll just go ahead and tell you. I'll just go ahead and tell you. Rahab, out of her lineage, out of her line, comes Jesus. Imagine that. Imagine that. This is what God takes. This is what God uses. He doesn't use everything in perfection. He uses the broken and he perfects it for his glory, for his purpose. Then the Israelites burned the town and everything in it. Only things made from silver, gold, bronze, or iron were kept for the treasury of the Lord's house. So Joshua spared Rahab, the prostitute, and her relatives who were with her in the house, because she had hidden the spies Joshua sent to Jericho, and she lives among the Israelites to this day. At that time, Joshua invoked this curse. May the curse of the Lord fall on anyone who tries to rebuild the town of Jericho. At the cost of his firstborn son, he will lay its foundation. At the cost of his youngest son, he will set up its gates. So the Lord was with Joshua, and his reputation spread throughout the land. Chapter 7. But Israel violated the instructions about the things set apart for the Lord. A man named Achan had stolen some of these dedicated things, so the Lord was very angry with the Israelites. Achan was the son of Carmi, the son of Zimri, son of Zerah, of the tribe of Judah. Joshua sent some of his men from Jericho to spy out the town of Ai, east of Bethel, near Bethaven. When they returned, they told Joshua, there's no need for all of us to go up there. It won't take more than 2,000 or 3,000 men to attack Ai. Since there are so few of them, don't make all our people struggle to go up there. So approximately 3,000 warriors were sent, but they were soundly defeated. The men of Ai chased the Israelites from the town gate as far as the quarries, and they killed about 36 who were retreating down the slopes. See what one person's sin could do? It cost 36 men their lives because of one person's sin. The Israelites were paralyzed with fear at this turn of events, and their courage melted away. Joshua and the elders of Israel tore their clothes in dismay, threw dust on their heads, and bowed face down to the ground before the ark of the Lord until evening. Then Joshua cried out, O sovereign Lord, why did you bring us across the Jordan River if you are going to let the Amorites kill us? If only we had been content to stay on the other side. Lord, what can I say now that Israel has fled from its enemies? For when the Canaanites and all the other people living in the land hear about it, they will surround us and wipe our name off the face of the earth. And then what will happen to the honor of your great name? But the Lord said to Joshua, get up. Why are you lying on your face like this? Israel has sinned and broken my covenant. They have stolen some of the things I commanded must be set apart from me. And they have not only stolen them, but have lied about it and hidden the things among their own belongings. That is why the Israelites are running from their enemies in defeat. For now Israel itself has been set apart for destruction. I will not remain with you any longer unless you destroy the things among you that were set apart for destruction. Get up, command the people to purify themselves in preparation for tomorrow, for this is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. Hidden among you, O Israel, are things set apart for the Lord. You will never defeat your enemies until you remove these things from among you. In the morning you must present yourselves by tribes, and the Lord will point out the tribe to which the guilty man belongs. The tribe must come forward with its clans, and the Lord will point out the guilty clan. That clan will then come forward, and the Lord will point out the guilty family. Finally, each member of the guilty family must come forward one by one. The one who has stolen what was set apart for destruction will himself be burned with fire, along with everything he has, for he has broken the covenant of the Lord and has done a terrible thing in Israel. Early the next morning, Joshua brought the tribes of Israel before the Lord, and the tribe of Judah was singled out. Then the clans of Judah came forward, and the clan of Zerah was singled out. Then the families of Zerah came forward, and the family of Zimri was singled out. And babe, help me remember, was it Zimri and Carmi that also got in trouble? Look that up for me.
I think you're right.
I think so. Every member of Zimri's family was brought forward, person by person, and Achan was singled out. Now it's getting scary for Achan. Well, it's already getting scary for Achan. Then Joshua said to Achan, my son, give glory to the Lord, the God of Israel, by telling the truth. Make your confession and tell me what you have done. Don't hide it from me. Achan replied, it is true. I have sinned against the Lord, the God of Israel. Among the plunder I saw a beautiful robe from Babylon, 200 silver coins, and a bar of gold weighing more than a pound. I wanted them so much. Here's greed. This is what greed can do to us. That I took them. They are hidden in the ground beneath the tent with the silver buried deeper than the rest. So Joshua sent some men to make a search. They ran to the tent and found the stolen goods hidden there just as Achan had said, with the silver buried beneath the rest. They took the things from the tent and brought them to Joshua and all the Israelites. Then they laid them on the ground in the presence of the Lord. Then Joshua and all the Israelites took Achan, the silver, the robe, the bar of gold, his sons, daughters, cattle, donkeys, sheep, goats, tents, and everything he had, and they brought them to the valley of Achor. Then Joshua said to Achan, why have you brought trouble on us? The Lord will now bring trouble on you. And all the Israelites stoned Achan and his family and burned their bodies. Because of his greed, because of his sin, 36 men died in battle, and now all of his family, his sons, his daughters, his wife, all of them, his livestock, everything that he had. They piled a great heap of stones over Achan, which remains to this day. That is why the place has been called the Valley of Trouble ever since. So the Lord was no longer angry. Chapter 8. Then the Lord said to Joshua, do not be afraid or discouraged. Take all your fighting men and attack Ai, for I have given you the king of Ai, his people, his town, and his land. You will destroy them as you destroyed Jericho and its king. But this time you may keep the plunder and livestock for yourselves. Set an ambush behind the town. So Joshua and all the fighting men set out to attack Ai. Joshua chose 30,000 of his best warriors and sent them out at night with these orders. Hide in ambush close behind the town and be ready for action. When our main army attacks, the men of Ai will come out to fight as they did before, and we will run away from them. We will let them chase us until we have drawn them away from the town, for they will say, the Israelites are running away from us as they did before. Then while we are running from them, you will jump up from your ambush and take possession of the town, for the Lord your God will give it to you. Set the town on fire as the Lord has commanded you. You have your orders. So they left and went to the place of ambush between Bethel and the west side of Ai. But Joshua remained among the people in the camp that night. Early the next morning, Joshua roused his men and started toward Ai, accompanied by the elders of Israel. All the fighting men who were with Joshua marched in front of the town and camped on the north side of Ai with a valley between them and the town. That night, Joshua sent 5,000 men to lie in ambush between Bethel and Ai on the west side of the town. So they stationed the main army north of the town and the ambush west of the town. Joshua himself spent that night in the valley. When the king of Ai saw the Israelites across the valley, he and all his army hurried out early in the morning and attacked the Israelites at a place overlooking the Jordan Valley. But he didn't realize there was an ambush behind the town. Joshua and the Israelite army fled toward the wilderness as though they were badly beaten. Then all the men in the town were called out to chase after them. In this way, they were lured away from the town. There was not a man left in Ai or Bethel who did not chase after the Israelites, and the town was left wide open. That's good battle strategy right there. Then the Lord said to Joshua, "Point the spear in your hand toward Ai, for I will hand the town over to you." Joshua did as he was commanded. As soon as Joshua gave this signal, all the men in ambush jumped up from their position and poured into the town. They quickly captured it and set it on fire. When the men of Ai looked behind them, smoke from the town was filling the sky, and they had nowhere to go. For the Israelites who had fled in the direction of the wilderness now turned on their pursuers. When Joshua and all the other Israelites saw that the ambush had succeeded and that smoke was rising from the town, they turned and attacked the men of Ai. Meanwhile, the Israelites who were inside the town came out and attacked the enemy from the rear. So the men of Ai were caught in the middle with Israelite fighters on both sides. Israel attacked them, and not a single person survived or escaped. Only the king of Ai was taken alive and brought to Joshua. When the Israelite army finished chasing and killing all the men of Ai in the open fields, they went back and finished off everyone inside. So the entire population of Ai, including men and women, was wiped out that day, 12,000 in all. For Joshua kept holding out his spear until everyone who had lived in Ai was completely destroyed. And those spears are not light. They're heavy. And he continued to hold it out. And that it wasn't, who knows how long this took. And I'm sure it didn't take just 5 minutes. I'm sure it didn't take just an hour. This took a while. It took a long time to do all of this. And all the while, he's holding it out. Only the livestock and the treasures of the town were not destroyed, for the Israelites kept these as plunder for themselves, as the Lord had commanded Joshua. So Joshua burned the town of Ai, and it became a permanent mound of ruins, desolate to this very day. Joshua impaled the king of Ai on a sharpened pole and left him there until evening. At sunset, the Israelites took down the body as Joshua commanded and threw it in front of the town gate. They piled a great heap of stones over him that can still be seen to this day. Then Joshua built an altar to the Lord, the God of Israel, on Mount Ebal. He followed the commands that Moses, the Lord's servant, had written in the book of instruction. Make me an altar from stones that are uncut and have not been shaped with iron tools. Then on the altar they presented burnt offerings and peace offerings to the Lord. And as the Israelites watched, Joshua copied on to the stones of the altar the instructions Moses had given them. Then all the Israelites, foreigners and native, born alike, along with the elders, officers, and judges, were divided into two groups. One group stood in front of Mount Gerizim, the other in front of Mount Ebal. Each group faced the other, and between them stood the Levitical priests carrying the Ark of the Lord's covenant. This was all done according to the commands that Moses, the servant of the Lord, had previously given for the blessing of the people of Israel. Joshua then read to them all the blessings and curses Moses had written in the book of instruction. Every word of every command that Moses had ever given was read to the entire assembly of Israel, including the women and children and the foreigners who lived among them. Such a great read. Thank you, Lord Jesus, for what you're showing us, for your anointing, for your presence. God, as we read your word, thank you, God, for what you're doing. Thank you, guys, for joining me. Come back again tomorrow for day 67. We're going to be done with Joshua in just a week. It's only going to take us a week to read through the book of Joshua. And then we're going to be starting in our 7th book of the Bible here in just the 3rd month of the year. The Bible is just an exciting and empowering read for you, and it's easy to do. I'll see you again tomorrow, you guys. Thank you for joining me. Be sure to spread the word. Be sure to share this with your friends. Invite everybody to be a part of this. Let's journey through the Bible together. Bye-bye.